because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are. And we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Yeah, how many times did you want to leave our toddler with a bunch of quarters and a skateboard during the pandemic?
Those quarters, man.
Yeah, that would have been the end of that.
Oh, no.
Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is one of many movie podcasts inspired by the jungle-crazed musings of one Werner Herzog. My name is Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we're talking about, well, let me just say, first of all, it's just the two of us today.
Just me and you. Just me and you.
We're feeling strong.
Just the two of us. We're
Just the
talking
two of
about
us.
Encino Man.
I'm too sexy for my love. Too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
So Encino Man, this is a movie I saw a lot when I was a kid.
Saw a lot when you were a kid?
I mean, I definitely watched it probably in middle school, and I probably had it on VHS, and I watched it a lot. And or just be on TV or whatever. It's a very rewatchable movie, I think.
Totally,
It's
yeah.
very fun. It's got a bunch of like silly, early 90s jokes. And for those of the audience who haven't seen it, it really has sort of three leads, you know. It's got Sean Astin as this guy named Dave, who's, he's kind of struggling being a loser in high school. He's got a crush on this girl, and who's obviously with a much, more conventionally attractive guy. And his best friend is played by Pauly Shore, whose name is Stoney Brown. Pauly Shore basically playing himself.
Yeah.
And fun fact, this was Laura's first Pauly Shore movie.
Yes.
So we'll get into little Pauly Shore. And so that was fun. And the two of them happened to, in the process of excavating a pool, they're digging a pool in Dave's backyard. During an earthquake, they unearth a frozen caveman, played by Fraser, who was frozen in ice back in an earthquake in his time and preserved perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And then found by these two young high school guys just looking to be cool and chill. And they thaw him out. Turns out he's still alive. His bodily processes were preserved in the ice, and shenanigans ensue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun movie.
It was so fun. It's definitely my first time seeing it. I didn't even know it existed. I've never heard of it. You kept saying Encino Man, and I was like, Encino what? Like, I had never heard of this movie, which is a huge oversight because I had a massive crush on Fraser back in the day. But I don't know how I missed this one. I think it must have just been I was like a little bit too young.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely
yeah.
were too young for this. I mean, I'm too young for this movie. I saw it, as I said, I saw it in middle school, but that would have been 4 or 5 years after this movie was released. And of course, everyone in it is older than me. Not only were playing older than me, they were older than me. And I'm a kind of cuspy millennial Gen Xer, and I feel like this movie is just like 100% in the Gen X zone.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the two most sympathetic characters, Link, Fraser, and Stoney, played by Pauly Shore, in some sense, really embody a certain Gen X ideology. This notion of just like chilling, making do with what you have, not needing to strive to get ahead, being content, having time to yourself, pursue your own ambitions, regardless of whether they're the ones that are socially deemed to be valuable and that sort of thing. I feel like that this movie is kind of a celebration of that. And weirdly, the main character, the protagonist or the viewpoint character, who's Dave, is kind of the villain in some sense. He provides a lot of the friction for the movie, and he has the most clear arc of the film because he has to kind of come to understand his own place, like Stoney and Link do.
Yeah. Man, Dave's terrible in this movie. I really hated Dave.
What sort of things did about Dave really bothered you?
Well, I mean, so his entire focus, the entire movie is just trying to get popular, which...
Well, to get the girl. He
to
wants
get the girl and to get popular. But yes, you think that's the ultimate thing is to get.
I think
He wants to get popular in order
It's
to
a
get
bit
the
of
girl.
a hornball.
Yeah. Well, and you find out that they've been friends since childhood. And Stoney at one point says something
Him and the girl.
Him and the girl. And Stoney at one point says something like, well, you could have had her in ninth grade. And Dave says, like, she hadn't reached babe levels at that point. So it's like, he only wants to be with her now because she's hot. He didn't really appreciate her when she was maybe less conventionally, whatever, less high school hot, but still a cool girl.
Yeah.
And he just keeps showing her pictures of them in a bathtub, being like, we deserve to be together because we were in a bathtub once when we were 5. Like, she needs to get a restraining order. It's gross.
That part is really weird. Just to build on what you're saying, I mean, it's unclear what else is drawing him to her besides the fact that she's an attractive person who has a lot of social capital within their social spheres. They don't interact very much.
No.
When they do, she seems largely uninterested in whatever he's interested in. They don't seem to have any flirtation or rapport or friendship, or they don't seem to get along in any way. So, yeah, it's just based on A, she's hot, and B, I have this history with her.
Yep. Yeah. And this feeling like he deserves her. And more so than Matt does. He's got this thing about like, what does she see in him? Like,
Yeah.
I'm better. I deserve to be with her.
It's a little toxic. It's a little bit like this, incel toxicity of like, I'm a good guy dork who deserves the girl. He doesn't appreciate her because he's so, cool and gets so much attention anyway. Yeah, it's not great.
Well,
I mean, that sort of thing plays a lot, as we talked about before. It plays a lot in 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
Teenage comedies.
Yeah. I mean, but there's this funny like interaction where in the very beginning of the movie where we're sort of laying the groundwork, and that's when he says something about like she hadn't reached babehood levels in ninth grade, but he's like, what does Matt have? And Stoney kind of goes on a little monologue about what Matt does have. And it's a number of things that like Stoney's able to see. It's not just like physical attractiveness. It's like his athleticism and his like social status, and also that he's rich. I think they mentioned too that he's got fundage. I think he says, and he's got spiky melon. He's got cool hair.
He's got style.
He's got style.
I mean, he does have style. For sure.
But like, I mean, it's just funny that like Stoney is able to like have this. He seems to have this like aerial view of high school, and there's like no judgment values on anything. He's just like, yeah, like this guy's got a lot of stuff going for him. We don't particularly like him because he punches people and he's kind of a jerk, but like he's also got some other attributes that I can see why people would find him attractive.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a fair assessment. I mean, Matt is, I think, clearly a jerk.
He's a jerk,
and nowhere clearer is this than when Link shows up and sort of threatens his dominance within the social sphere. And he immediately, he's the only person who seems to react negatively towards Link's presence. Everyone else seems to just celebrate Link. Oh, he's so quirky and he's into everyone. He's friends with everyone. And Matt is the one who, he fights him and attempts to out him as a caveman. Which, come on, man, don't do that.
Even if it is true. It's such an optimistic view of high school, though, that like somebody like Link would be popular. Because I was thinking about that, like he, at least by looks and maybe by like chill vibes, is kind of a Travis equivalent and in Clueless, right? Like he's not a stoner and that he doesn't actually partake in marijuana, but in terms of like his hacky sack vibes, you know what I mean? I feel like he's like, that would be the crew he'd fit into in Cher's high school. And those people are definitely not top of the chain in Cher's high school.
Yeah.
That may be a Beverly Hills versus an Encino thing, but it is sort of like an optimistic idea that somebody who is so open and carefree would be the top of a social food chain in high school, which I don't think usually rewards that kind of happiness.
I think that's right, but I also think that the movie is trying to sketch a way forward for how to like transcend the social, the complexities of social interaction in high school, and how everyone fractures into these little cliques.
Mhm.
And the suggestion, though, is that the way to transcend is to take a punch by the biggest jock, right? The biggest bully of your high school, to take the punch, have everyone think, oh, you're really badass. You took the punch and just walked away. That seems to be what catapults him into the stratosphere of popularity within the group, within the high school.
Yeah.
And then it's that combined with the fact that he never wields his newfound social capital against anyone.
Mhm.
You know, he's generous with it. He props up the computer chess guy, even when the guys I don't know what they are, like rappers or whatever. I'm not sure. They're like dancer rapper guys. They are cool with him. He high fives them. Then he goes and hangs out with the computer guy, and the computer guy's like, "We wanted to make you an honorary member." And the rapper guys come by and make fun of the computer guy, and he just hugs the computer guy.
Mhm.
And I think that sort of shows that generosity of like, yeah, I'm so cool. Like, I don't need to play into your petty conflicts that are occurring, otherwise beneath me.
Mhm.
And I think that that's actually reasonably accurate. Like, I knew people in high school who were above those kind of conflicts, and people respected them because of that.
Mm.
Or they were just mystified by them because they were seemed to be somehow like ethereal. They like floated above the fray.
Right.
And Link kind of does that. And I think that I think that's something to strive for in a way, because it allows you
Sure.
ultimately to be your own person, to be yourself and not fall prey to the social pressures that everyone else is, throwing your way. Because I think if you contrast Link with Stoney, who similarly is above the fray in a way, he's kind of, he's sort of clearly marches to the beat of his own drum. He has his own style and...
Okay, my friend. Try and experience what I'm about to chirp in your lobes, okay, cool? Today, buddy, we're gonna discuss grindage. How to fill the furnace, pack the cheeks, and stuff the gills. Okay?
He only cares about, what is it? Nugs, something in grindage.
Grindage. I don't know. Jeopardy.
Chillin' and
Chillin'.
Nugs, chillin', and grindage.
What are nugs?
Nugs are ladies.
Wow, you figured that out.
I figured that out based
on
on the IMDb casting, because Brendan Fraser's ice wife, ice lady wife is called like Cave Nug, and then there's and then there's like Nug number 1, Nug number 2, Nug number. So I think it's ladies.
Okay, so he cares about nugs.
Although there's no evidence that he cares about nugs. He never pursues any nugs.
He never pursues nugs. Well, he kind of has a share mentality in that regard. He at one point when Dave is like, "Hey man, we need to like, get Link because that will make us cool." He's like, "Hey, we've got our sights set on bigger things. We're going to college,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're out of this. Like, we don't need to deal with all of this petty conflict here. We got our sights set on, on broader horizons." And so maybe he's just not really worried about
He's not worried about high school
nugs. Yeah,
He just focused on college nugs.
yeah. He's like, I'll have my nuggage down the
Like,
road.
college nugs are on birth control.
Did he what?
No.
Okay. Well, what is grindage? Do we know?
Grindage, I think, is food.
Okay.
Because
that's right.
He explains that there's grindage and there's multiple types of food groups. Bananas are not in a food group. So yeah, I think he calls that grindage.
Okay.
So I think he cares about ladies hanging out
And food.
and food.
Yeah.
It's what we all care about, honestly.
I will have some comments actually about his character in a second, but
Okay.
I think there's something. I think it sort of fits with this characterization.
But you were
of his
comparing
character.
Lincoln and
Well, just because
Stoney.
the Stoney, he kind of similarly it espouses his ethos, but he doesn't have the same sort of social capital as Link. Link.
It's also because Link's hot, though.
Right. So I guess there's some degree of like just standard conventional attractiveness. But I also think, Link embodies a kind of, he's just more conventional all the way through. Like Stoney is a very strange guy. He's a quirky guy, and he sort of exists on his own plane. He has all these weird aphorisms that he says, and he's got all these weird hand signals, the little hand signal and sounds that he
it's
makes.
his weasel sound.
Weasel sounds, and Yeah, so he's, I think, just like a little bit too unconventional for high school.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this after we watched it, that like he's someone who wouldn't be cool in high school but would be cool in college, or
I
he
think
just
so.
feels like a more prototypical college student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we'd be like, but that's the funny thing about Link is that Link is kind of, I mean, when they show what he's doing that people think is so delightful, it's like doing gymnastics down the hall and making silly cave drawings on the computer and stuff, like kind of goofy things. It's not like he's pretty idiosyncratic too, you know, because he's like from a different time period.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I think you're right. It's because he took a punch and also because he's hot.
He also seems, the one other thing on this is he also seems to embrace whatever's in front of him. So it's like, you know, they kind of point him in the direction and he embraces fully and with all of his, you know, attention, whatever that is. So whether it's Spanish class, computer class where he's doing the drawings, pottery where he's making, he's fully engaged with that.
Yeah.
He's never trying to do it to be cool. He's always just like, I'm going to do this. And I think that the people, there's always these shots of people watching him do these activities and sort of getting a lot of pleasure out of watching how much he's enjoying and working on it and developing his skill. And I think there's something, you know, that we appreciate about that. I think justifiably.
Yeah. Yeah. He makes high school look like so much fun. You know?
Yeah.
Like he's just like, what? I get to go and play in clay, and then I get to go and draw on a computer, and then I get to drive a car on one half, like on two out of four wheels, and just like drive it straight into a bar. Like best day ever. High school's great.
Yeah, I mean, and if we all want to be around people like that.
Yeah,
those are fun people to be around. You know, they're just non-judgmental, earnest people who embrace whatever is happening fully. And so I can definitely, I think, see the appeal of Link. He has that kind of naive innocence that works because he fully embraces. And, you know, the other way this could have played is that, I mean, there were two ways it could play, actually. Let's talk a little bit about this. So one way it could play is he comes and then everyone like makes fun of him because he does stupid stuff, right? So like, you know, there's a lot of different ways of doing fish out of water. And a very standard way is like, oh, look at this foreigner. They don't know how to use a fork or something. That's stupid. And there's a little bit of that. He eats dog food, but they don't, it's not really ever played where you get a lot of intense reaction shots where the characters are like looking down on him, you know?
No, people
They're just bewildered.
Yeah, it's closer to like a Forrest Gump or like a Being There thing. Like he makes a picture out of ketchup and mustard, and the girl's like, it's so avant-garde.
Yeah.
Like people are apt to just like interpret it as like something like cool because it's European or something, and they don't understand it.
So the movie doesn't go in that direction, right? Where it's not making fun of him. But it also doesn't go in the direction that it sort of sets up as if it's going to go, which is that when they're talking about the cavemen in the class, the teacher says,
you see, Cro-Magnon man, even though he's not bad looking, you know, he's standing upright and all, he was extremely brutal. So he just took whatever he wanted. And that included his women.
That's barbaric.
Indeed.
So you think, oh, maybe that's how this is going to play. Like they're going to uncover a caveman and they're going to have to like socialize him, and he's going to like, you know, attack women and that sort of thing. And then really it's the exact opposite, right? He has to teach Dave how to embrace, how to like sort of transcend the social issues that Dave has been undergoing. And he has to teach Dave how to sort of get in touch with his own inner, I mean, I don't want to say inner caveman, but just like inner self, like become his own person who isn't beholden to these social standards.
He's obsessed with the idea of becoming popular. Like that's all he ever talks about. You have no idea what he's interested in or anything about him besides that he needs to be popular, and it's not working out for him. Yeah, I thought that was going to go that way too, especially because like one of the first interactions he has in high school, he goes up to Robin and Ella and says like Gonzagas and tries to grab the boobs. And I thought it was going to be like that. And Ella thinks he's hot. And so I thought this movie was going to be, particularly because we already know Matt's a jerk at this point and he has the girl. And then we're going to have a caveman come in, and immediately women find him attractive, even though he's like trying to grab their boobs and talking about Gonzagas. And I thought it was going to be like one of these sort of bitter movies that's like pointing out that women don't like the women that are good for them. They only like the men that treat them badly. And like women, or maybe high school women, like only want cavemen. I thought that was like going to be the point of this movie. And then of course, like the worst character is Dave in terms of like being self-involved and not empathetic and not particularly respectful of a woman's individual desires and her uninterest in him. Like he's the most of, caveman-y, if we're going to like assume that cavemen were a certain way. And I just think it's funny because like, it just feels like I wonder then if there's some sort of, I don't think it's necessarily there in the text, but it made me think about whether or not we're more primitive because of civilization. You know what I mean? Like, I think oftentimes men use evolution as a justification for their bad behavior. They say it's sort of written into their DNA. This is what men do.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson. Good example.
Does Jordan Peterson say that?
Yeah. He talks about how the, all of this kind of hierarchical structure is all built in nature. It's just a natural result of of conflict, basically. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. But now we're seeing a version of a caveman that is sweet and open and doesn't have any of these ideas of social hierarchies. Those all seem to be imposed completely by civilization, according to this narrative. And those kind of hierarchies are the things that make us be bad to each other. That's nothing innate in us. And funny enough, like the Gonzagas thing and him grabbing the boobs was something that he was taught by Stoney and Dave.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily have that in him. It's just that he just only learned a few words already. And one of them was Gonzagas.
Yeah.
He's just practicing his words.
I mean, it's an old idea that goes back to Hobbes, this idea that, left to our own devices, we'll just kill each other and take whatever. And we have no kind of innate sense of right and wrong and desire to help one another out, independent of being coerced to do so. And you're right that the movie, in a way, sort of supposes the opposite, that Dave has been corrupted, so to speak, by the social situation in high school.
Yeah, like high school makes us evil, not our biological selves.
Yeah, and he even at one point, when he's we'll get to this part in a later, but at one point he even says, like I don't know what came over me. Like he got so caught up in the social dimension that he like loses track of who he really is, and he has, and really, if you read it this way, then it requires the kind of naif of character of Link to pull him back from the brink, right? To pull him back and put him in touch, so to speak, with his pre-social roots. The kind of roots of family. The kind of roots that are forged in the home ultimately, and not in the classroom or in the like larger social structure. I think that's a really interesting read. And I think because it is ultimately Dave's journey, not Link's. You're led to think maybe it will be Link's, but it's really Dave's journey. And it's really him, coming to learn how to be a friend ultimately, I think, and not be corrupted by the social demands and the social pressures. And just to add one more thing on this, I have a certain empathy for Dave's character because I think it does describe and depict in a certain way a kind of universal experience, one that I definitely felt, of feeling like when I was in high school, it was so easy to get caught up in just the minutia of these tedious and insignificant social conflicts. And this, getting caught up in things that, if you had the Stoney outlook, you think, these aren't going to matter in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to not even, who knows who these people are? We're going to be off in college, doing our own thing, completely different social group. This is insignificant. But at the time, it felt very significant to me. And I do regret not taking seriously at the time, things that mattered, would have mattered a lot more. and instead spent my time caring a lot about social hierarchy, unfortunately. And it's easy to get caught up in it. And in a way, I wish I had a link to like help remind me that this stuff isn't really what matters. What matters are the friends that you have that will last.
Yeah.
And the projects that you pursue that will have, an impact on your life going forward. And all this other stuff isn't that significant.
Yeah. I wish I had a link in my life, not for exactly the same reasons, but more in the sense of like reminding me to stay present. Because I think I didn't pine after the popular kids because I was at high school. By high school, I was already pretty resigned to the fact that like that was not going to happen for me. But then I had like formed this hard outer shell where I was like, well, high school doesn't matter. I'm going to get out of here. So I'm just going to be like, the hardworking, nerdy kid. And I'm feeling a little spiteful towards the popular kids, but I'm not trying to be them because this is all nonsense. I'm getting out of here is kind of how I felt about it, which is in some ways a helpful perspective and other ways not, because I did not always enjoy myself in high school because I was so focused on getting out of there that I didn't just like enjoy the wonderful friends that I had and all the fun that is available in high school. There's a lot of bullshit in high school, but there's also like a lot of fun, and I don't think I was as carefree and enjoying the sort of lack of responsibilities and youth that I had. Everybody says they didn't appreciate their youth, but I didn't appreciate it in that moment.
It's hard.
I was stressed out and I was, bitter. At the tender age of 16. And I definitely needed a link. I kind of had a link. My high school boyfriend was a little link-like, but I could have, I think maybe had a couple more in my life. It would have helped.
I mean, there's the link kind of person who helps remind us of our more naive side of things. But then there's also the Stoney who is someone who's not a naif. He's versed in everything, but he's just has a very mature attitude towards it. And Stoney to me, in a way, is the hero of the film.
Totally.
And, if Dave is the kind of, wouldn't say he's the villain, but Dave is definitely a conflict character, a character who at various points makes decisions that are troubling and difficult for the audience to empathize with.
Yeah.
But
he walks Link down a highway and just leaves him with a bunch of quarters.
Yeah.
What's his plan for that?
I mean, it's unfortunate and it's a very selfish move. Actually, throughout the film, Dave makes a lot of selfish decisions.
He's insanely selfish.
Yeah. But Stoney, on the other hand, he kind of embodies the notion of sort of living in the present really well. But he embodies it in a way that I think is well characterized by past guest Kieran Sedia, his notion of an atelic desire, this notion of not desiring activities which have endpoints. So like not desiring to, get a good grade or get into certain college. Because the problem with that is that, those things eventually end and you just replace them with more and you just realize, it's just this rat race. This is ongoing rat race.
Tell me more about that.
So Kieran's therapy for this is to say replace some, at least, of these telic desires with atelic desires, this sort of desire to just undergo. And Stoney truly embodies that.
Yeah.
So here's some examples of him embodying it. I think one of the clearest cases is when they first find Link, Dave is trying to convince Stoney to help him in this process. Stoney's like, I don't know. I don't really want to take on any more responsibility here. And Dave says, well, look, we could get rich because of this, right?
You gotta help me dig him out. Look, you were here. You're part of it.
I won't be part of anything, Dave. I'm happy just to be me.
It could mean money. You tell me you couldn't use a new scooter? Some new bell-bottoms? A little frontage? Wheeze some older nugs with a mansion and a pool? Soaking up the rays? Watching all the Jeopardy you can handle?
That was the clincher,
Everybody's got a price, come on.
Yeah, and I think that's telling that there are all these telic things: get a mansion, get money, get this and that.
Get
But
bell
then
bottoms.
watch Jeopardy. That's atelic.
Mhm.
Watch Jeopardy you're not watching Jeopardy to get to the end of Jeopardy. You're just watching it to be in the state of watching Jeopardy. Granted, it will end, but you're not doing it to end it,
Mhm.
right? You're doing it to just be in the experience of watching it. That's the thing Stoney likes.
Yeah. There's another part even before that when he asks Stoney to help him dig a pool. And Dave is digging a pool so that he can like have a pool for prom so that he can be most popular. Like everything he's doing is like part of this giant plan. He's of course not digging a hole just to dig a hole. And he asks if Stoney wants to help. And Stoney's like, I'm just happy munching. He's just eating his bagel, the last bagel that he stole from Dave's mom.
Yeah, he seems completely content, even though his life is not going that well.
Mm-hmm.
He seems completely content to be in the moment of wherever he is and just be enjoying the process of whatever he's going through. And, I think that there is something valuable about that mindset. And I think Stoney is a nice embodiment of it. So, kudos to Stoney for being our banner atelic person.
Mm-hmm.
And he really does, he's also virtuous because in the moment where, as we talked about before, when Dave decides ultimately that he needs to get rid of Link, his decision there is because he asks the girl, Robin is her character's name, to go to the prom, and she says, I want to go with Link. And at that moment he's like, oh, screw this, I can't be friends with Link anymore, well, whatever. So he decides in that moment to basically ditch Link on the side of the road, give him some quarters for the video game, and that's it. But then Stoney shows up and is the sort of the voice of reason. He's like, friends don't do this to their friends. We don't abandon each other if, just because they get in the way of whatever we want.
Call him back. That's harsh.
He's not my responsibility.
You're the one who wheezed off his gig the whole time because you thought maybe it'd get you somewhere. And now the guy gets a little crusty and you're just gonna bag him. It's not happening, Dave. I'm sorry, that's not how it works with friends, man. You don't bag your friends just because they get in your way, no matter what, dude.
Like you care? The only thing you have ever cared about in your life is nugs, chillin', and grindage.
Yeah, well, I happen to care right now.
That's convenient.
It takes Stoney telling him that, and then Link coming in and sort of breaking up their fight for Dave to realize what he's done and how hurtful and harmful what he's done to Link is, and how he's really, there's a friendship there, a relationship, and he's attempted to sever it. It also shows, I think, Link's compassion in that he's willing to forgive him, right? Like, I hadn't thought about that actually while I was watching it, but thinking about it now, I mean, this guy just basically like disowned him, and in a matter of 30 seconds was brought back around. And in that moment, Link never once says like, that was really lame. Like he never holds it against him. He never holds any grudge against Dave. They just hug.
Yeah. Although it's never very clear how much Link is understanding what's going on.
I think he understands that he's being like
abandoned?
kicked out. Yeah. I
Okay.
think he's not happy about it. And he's walking down the road, because that's what he's told to do. But I think he realizes that he's sad. I think he realizes that something's gone wrong, but he doesn't hold it against Dave. I think that's interesting. He shows compassion for Dave. He sort of understands to some extent that Dave is going through some stuff and he needs to, forgive him for the mistakes that he's made. It's virtuous.
That's lovely. Stupid Dave. I don't like Dave. Like, I don't like that Dave gets the girl in the end. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
It's a Hollywood movie. It's got to do it, I guess. But I'm just like, they ended it with like everybody at the pool after prom, and he gets the girl just exactly what he wanted, the exact plan that he was hatching before he acted like a total asshole for 2 weeks.
It would have been easy for them not to write it that way, but at least they didn't worry about pairing Stoney off with someone They did pair Link off with someone, but
Well, his original someone.
Yeah,
He got his
true.
cave nug back.
yeah, it's true. It's true. But again, that was just very quickly added, clearly. The other aspect of this movie that is jumps out to us being a family that have a small child is that you really do see that this is a family.
Mhm.
So you have Dave and Stoney are mother and father, or father and father, and their adopted son is Link. He really is, or especially early in the movie, behaves like a toddler, and they behave like bickering parents at various points, and he being the kid who has to come between them and kind of get them to reconcile. And yeah, there's a lot of funny parts where,
we were just looking at each other like,
Yeah.
oh, our son did that yesterday.
yeah, so there's a lot. His first word is no. They're like, did he just say no?
No.
And we're like, yep, he said no.
You're going to hear that a lot.
It's a lot of him imitating them,
Mhm.
and that's very much like in a kind of weird, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's very much like a toddler. Like our toddler will say, like, we're like, say hello, and he's like, hello. He just, it's very weird. It's just not like normal English, but
He'll also just repeat just the strangest snippet of what you said. Like you and I will be talking and our son will just be like muttering in the background, like just one little phrase of that. Just like how Link is just like, wheeze the juice.
Gazongas.
Hey, fire up.
and
He's also always eating stuff he shouldn't be
it's
eating.
true. He's always like eating a frog or whatever.
Or like a bath bead or something. Like something when they were bathing.
That's right. He's eating bath beads. And
squirting ketchup or squirting mustard in his mouth.
yeah, he's just imitating and being, I don't know, experimental just in the way that a toddler does. But then, just thinking about the movie then is like they're trying to forge a kind of unconventional family, makes it deepens and strengthens the complexity of the relationship between the three of them, right? It's not then you could think of it as like a three-way friendship, but it's not. It's really, because it's asymmetric. They have power over him in a way that, so it's a parental relationship there. But just like in any parental relationship, you learn from your children. Your children teach you how to be compassionate, and often through by trying your patience, but by also showing you how to be forgiving and how to be innocent, and they exhibit these virtues just because they don't know any better in some way, and they haven't been corrupted by the social scheme, and that reminds you of that kind of innocence and what's valuable about it, and you desire to preserve that. And because you could think a little bit about, well, what's going to happen after this movie ends. Dave has been saved, maybe, but Link, is he going to get corrupted? Is he just going to become like Dave or like Matt? Right, because he has
God forbid.
he has the looks and the popularity. Is it going to go to his head? Right, that's always the sad thing when you're, as a parent, you look at your child and you see that innocence, and you just know that it's impossible. It won't be preserved. It's just inevitable that society and bullies and other people are going to come into their lives and make it, and corrupt them, so to speak, make them, sacrifice that innocence. And that's going to happen to Link too. And it's sad. And I think there's only so much of that you can preserve. And I suppose the movie, that's probably why it's best the movie ends when it does. Because the sequel would probably just end up with like Link becoming a jerk.
Becoming an investment banker. Oh, what a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe the best we can hope for then is to be Stoney. Yeah. Because I was thinking, like, when I said it would be nice to would have been nice to have a Link in my life. I currently have a Link in my life, in the way that like our son is so delighted by everything right now, and so eager to help, and so just like lit up by life, and also devastated by life in equal measure. But like we took him to the zoo the other day and he was just really excited to splash in some standing water in a dirty old wagon. And I was like, all right, there's a jaguar next to you, but that's sure. Everything's delightful. Everything is delightful.
It's all delightful and it's all equally delightful.
Yes. That's
there's
kind of
no-
what Link is like in this movie. That cannot last either. The innocence cannot last. And I think that sort of like pure joy out of every experience can't last. You do eventually be like, okay, I've seen some water in some wagons. I'm not that excited
Yeah,
anymore.
this jaguar is now suddenly a little bit more appealing.
But I hope that our son maybe takes on a little bit of that Stoney mentality and enjoying the atelic activities and not so caught up in the telic, the goals, the striving, the social nonsense all around him, that he can be so comfortable in his own skin that as Stoney is too. Because that's the other part. He enjoys his atelic activities. But he also, says so much stuff because Dave is putting him down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dave is like, we have to utilize Link to up our social capital because we suck and we're losers. And Stoney's always like, I'm not a loser. I'm just like myself. And he said, I'm just underrated because I live in Encino.
Yeah.
He believes he's totally cool. And he says he's popular at one point. And Dave's like, no, you're not. But I just love that he's just like, I am who I am. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. He also, just one more point on Stoney being
the best.
The best is
straight up best.
He's the only character who sticks up for anyone. Like when Link is when they go to the Blades, the Blades rink, and the skaters, cause Dave to fall. Stoney's like, man, that was harsh. He calls them out on that. And then similarly, when Mike hits Link, Dave goes and says, you have to stick up for yourself, right? Because again, he's obsessed with the kind of, what's this going to look like if you don't stick up for yourself? You're going to lose social capital. Turns out he's wrong about that, but he thinks that. So he's telling him, he's like, do this. And Stoney comes and is just like, to Mike, he's like, that was way harsh. He again he sticks up for his friend by calling out the misbehavior done towards them, right? He doesn't demand that his friend do something to retaliate. And he's not himself going to retaliate because he doesn't play into this, but he calls out the bad behavior. And I think that's really valuable. I think that you want someone like that in your life because it reminds you that there's something has been done wrong to you. And you are, if you feel bad about it, you're justified in feeling bad. But that's all that has to be. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to go and write the scales to show you're a man. And something similar actually happens in the scene when they end up in this bar. This is after the driving exam scene. They kind of, Link has driven them to some out of the way bar where there's, in the middle of the day, they're having a party. And one of the guys in the bar is telling everyone, don't look at my woman, right? She's so beautiful. If you even look at her, I'll kill you or I'll fight you or whatever. And Link ends up dancing with her. And then he's like, hey, what are you doing? And then Link, just by coincidence, he says the only two things he knows in Spanish. And the guy basically, the guy's basically like, okay, you made a good point. She's not worth it. She's not worth fighting over. And we're all friends. And again, it's that we don't have to buy into these social roles of retaliation and fighting for our status. We can just be cool and be friends. Everyone can just be cool and be friends.
Yeah. And then the lady slaps that man for not standing up for her, I guess, or not fighting for her honor or whatever. And then he looks sad and all of his friends hug him.
Yeah, they all have a
he
good
has
hug.
a little emotional moment. I love that Link is just diffusing stereotypical masculinity everywhere he goes and making every man more sensitive. The caveman is the one who's is sort of dismantling stereotypical masculinity that we would generally think of as caveman masculinity.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I think we've decided Stoney and Link for life. After we watched the movie, I showed Laura some trailers of some other Pauly Shore movies because I watched a lot of Pauly Shore movies.
Yeah,
when
I got him
younger.
mixed up with Ernest.
Yeah, which is a crazy mix-up. But yeah.
Well, they both have a movie where they go to the army? Question mark.
I see.
Yeah, it turns out they're not at all similar in any way. And then I also kind of get him mixed up with Rob Schneider.
That is fair.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, they both have curly hair. And they're both goofy, short guys. Yeah.
Okay. But like, I guess the thing is that Pauly Shore is always Pauly Shore, and then like you put him in a situation, whereas like Rob Schneider is like now a hot chick, or now a dog, or now a gigolo. Like he transforms.
I mean, Rob Schneider is more about physical comedy. That's right. And Pauly Shore has kind of one shtick that he does. He just has this.
It's a good shtick. I didn't understand half of his dialogue for like 30 minutes. Yeah. Like we just figured out what nugs are, and we watched this movie 2 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, but what's fun about it though is that if you don't know who Pauly Shore is, you're just like, this is crazy. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's
and
how
then
I
you
felt.
learn a little bit about it, and you're like, okay, it's even crazier than that because this is just who this person is in real life. Like, this is him.
He just calls himself the Weasel and talks about wheezing.
This is like
crusties.
His persona that he's adopted. He's playing an exaggerated version of himself. Like, these are all things traits and I don't know, whatever. These are all like mannerisms that he developed in his like stand-up comedy persona routine that like now he's going to go and have like a pretty lucrative film career just playing that version of himself, right, in different situations. Which is like, it's kind of wild. You know, it's like the script must have been like, who knows who it was written for? Maybe it was written for Pauly Shore, who knows? But if it wasn't written for Pauly Shore, he probably just punched up every single line. Because those lines
but
were
then
not...
Sean Astin's, all his lines have to be changed too, because he has to be like, all you care about is nugs. He's like,
that's true. Yeah. I wonder what happened. I honestly, the writing process must have been wild, right? Just because he's adding all this of his own verve to the character. To be fair, though, it really does feel like Pauly Shore is kind of on another plane of existence. And, you know, like if you took him out of the movie would persist regardless. The movie is elevated by his presence by far. But
I would not like this movie without him.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I'd be so irritated
I think that's right.
by Dave.
And it also gives the movie staying power because it's so specific, built into this milieu that Pauly Shore had kind of himself created.
Yeah. And it didn't feel dated to me just because I had no idea who Pauly Shore was in that particular moment in time. So like it just feels like he's an alien.
It feels like there's this alien universality to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know,
Can I ask you, so Sean, so you think that in 1992, the average viewer is going to find Sean Astin like or Dave, the Dave character, like empathetic, if not like he's not doing the right thing, but you empathize with him, you relate to him. They find.
Yeah, I think that I think he's written to have an arc for sure. Nobody is like he was right the whole time, but I think it's clear he's supposed to have an arc. But I think that you're supposed to empathize with his character, and my suspicion is that if you are supposed to empathize with him the way I talked about earlier, about, you know, understanding that like he has this guy who's just too caught up in the social roles. I think that's pretty subtle. I suspect that most people at the time would have empathized with him as like we're kind of all going through this. We're kind of all shades of Dave. And he just goes a little too far in this one instance.
I see.
And
you think the casting is like helpful in that? Because here's what I'm saying. I didn't. He's in the Goonies, right? Okay. I only saw the Goonies once at a midnight movie, and I think I fell asleep. So apologies to everybody. But I think of Sean Astin as Samwell, and you know I don't like him. He's just grumbling the whole time, just complaining and talking about potatoes and being a dead weight. I don't like him. We'll do Lord of the Rings at some point.
But I think Sean
anyway, so I bring that like annoyance already to watching this movie. But I think most people find him like incredibly relatable, right?
Yes, I think Sean Astin is
like a real meanie.
I think if this character was played by someone who lacked the kind of everyman charm that Sean Astin has, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough role in that regard.
Yeah.
You have to have a certain ability to play an asshole in a likable way.
Yeah.
And part of that is the kind of wide-eyed, dough-faced, innocence that he has, and his voice.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like harsh about him. So when he says mean things, you're kind of like, he doesn't mean it, like. And I think that is to Sean Astin's credit. I think that's hard to pull off. Like if this character was played by someone who had any more alpha in them, you would be like, oof, he'd be so violent, he'd be so aggressive and harsh to Stoney and to Link, it'd be very hard to redeem that character. And I think that similarly, that's the appeal of Samwise in Lord of the Rings, that he has this kind of puppy dog devotion that's
Samwise. I called him Samwell. Oh no.
Well,
Samwise.
yeah, but I think that's the thought that no person is like that, but to some extent we strive for that kind of loyalty that he shows, that character shows, and I think Sean Astin really embodies that. He embodies. I mean, I don't know anything about his personal life, but you just see that guy and you're like, he's probably a good friend. He's probably good. And so I think so to have him be a jerk in this movie and not be a good friend, it sets up that redemption because you believe, you know where that's going to go. Yeah.
This is not who he really is in his core.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just high school is fucked with his head.
Yeah. So actually, I think the casting is great. And,
yeah,
the only one that I think I would, on the face of it, think, I could go either ways, is Brendan Fraser. And Brendan Fraser's great,
I mean, he made a career out of doing fish out of water stuff.
It turns out, yes. But I think Brendan Fraser, for all that, right, for all this playing dumb kind of stuff, he has leading man looks, and, he did that thing with Mummy and all that. And, I could have seen it going a very different way and him not playing these dumb characters. But that's kind of what he fell into, and I think as the result of Encino Man. And, I mean, kudos to him. I do suspect that there's some embarrassment that like this became a pattern. But there are people that are like that, right? The people that just, they kind of just look dumb. I mean, I don't think Brendan Fraser does. That's the thing that's the thing that surprised me about it, is I don't think he has that kind of like lunkish, kind of dead-eyed stare that I think you would expect a character like this to have. I think I'm like, yeah, look at him. I'm like, he could have easily played the Matt role, right? He could have been that guy.
I think what we always underestimate about the fish out of water silly roles is that like that's actually, they're kind of demanding in some ways. Like you have to have, like, he's a very good physical comedian. Which, George of the Jungle and Encino Man ask of him. He might not be saying a lot of lines, but he has to do a lot of physical, like,
it's a lot with the face.
A lot with the face, yeah. It's a lot of like almost mime work, and that's its own challenge. So it's not about being dumb. It's just a different tool.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of you would think that you have to kind of have a minimal amount of looking kind of. Or
vacant.
be able to be able to summon a kind of vacancy. And then you wonder, like, am I just like good at playing vacant because it's part of my nature? Anyway, but no, he's great in it. He's really great. And I kind of weirdly, you're going to think this is crazy, I think, but I kind of have this association between Fraser and Billy Zane.
Oh, I don't think that's crazy.
They kind of, to me, look very similar. And they were both peaking, I think, around the same time. And I suspect they were both competing for the same roles. Anyway, I've always kind of associated the two of them in my head. Of course, they're very different. Billy Zane could never play this character. He just has too much of that conventional attractiveness. He looks like a model too much.
Right,
it's not going to work.
You wouldn't believe a caveman had those eyebrows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just too groomed looking.
Yeah. Anyway, he's like sophisticated in a way that like, he plays a kind of sophisticated jerk in a way that Brendan Fraser doesn't. And so anyway, but yeah, it's this is a weird association I have. Have they never been in a movie together?
I don't know.
I mean, he was in this movie called The Phantom, but which I always thought of in the same sort of vein as
The Mummy.
Yeah, as The Mummy. Maybe that's all it was.
I'm really excited to revisit The Mummy and excited / nervous and like really investigate, the gender politics of that and how and how bad it is, because I think it might be bad. I think it may be tough for me to rewatch. But my love for Brendan Fraser may overcome.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get into that just to do a little Fraser on Fraser miniseries.
Is it Fraser or Fraser? I thought it was Fraser. We've been saying differently this entire time.
Okay, well, we probably just alienated half of our audience.
We'll figure it out by the next one.
Yeah, we'll figure it out and we'll get back to you. Final thoughts?
Don't we use the juice?
Link and I are cruising the mountain, bro, and we figure we's a little juice.
No, wheezing the juice. Wheeze the juice. No, wheezing the juice.
Definitely don't wheeze the juice, but also
do wheeze the juice, just maybe not directly on the spout.
Yeah.
That's not cool in COVID times.
That is definitely gonna spread some germs.
You can wheeze the juice just in your own cup.
Yeah, but I think wheezing the juice means pouring it directly from the spout into your mouth.
Oh.
Because the guy says don't wheeze the juice, but like he is not referring to them pouring it into a cup and then drinking from it.
Well, I think he's also passed this or wheezing the juice for free.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
If you put it in a cup,
if you put it in a cup, then you gotta pay for it. Exactly. Well, anyway, I would say don't wheeze the juice. I would also say thanks everyone for listening. We are at CowsPod on Twitter. You can find us on the web at cowspod.wordpress.com. So follow us there for updates as far as what's coming up next. And if you enjoyed this, do the usual stuff. Rate us on iTunes, whatever, Apple, and send us a review. And we hope you enjoyed this fun discussion of this 1992 classic, Encino Man.
He's a caveman.
No! Look! He's a freak!
I'll be back.